When you're watching Iron Man 3, this movie is severely underrated, I think. It's kind of the end of the Iron Man trilogy, which is surprising because he stays on the franchise for years more later on. His presence is felt throughout the rest of the MCU, but it's kind of like this is the end of his own solo journey per se, not the end of his story, but like of his trilogy. And I think when he initially signed on, it was like a 5 movie deal, 5 or 4. I don't recall the amount that he was signed up for. Essentially, he was supposed to do Iron Man 1, 2, and 3. And then I think he was supposed to do an Avengers, the Avengers, and that was supposed to be it. And I say 5 because he does that cameo in The Incredible Hulk. So maybe that was part of the deal, is that like that was the fifth movie he was supposed to be a part of. Technically, he just shows up at the end as like a little end credits scene, and that's it. Like that was the idea, I think. But anyways, I think after Iron Man 3, that's supposed to be the end of Iron Man or Robert Downey Jr. or any of that stuff, you know. But obviously, because of the success of the Avengers, and then they already had Iron Man 3 slated for the following year release, they were like, we're actually going to keep on going with this franchise. We need Robert Downey Jr. back for the next Avengers movie. And then we need him back for Captain America. And then we need him back again for Spider-Man. And then we need him back again for, on and on and on and on and on. But in terms of trilogies or of the ending of this one, I feel like this one stuck the landing. I still feel like the first Iron Man was the best. Iron Man 2 was okay, and then this third one was good. It was nice. I think they made it really fun, and it played a lot to Robert Downey Jr.'s strengths, which is his acting ability. He can't, being behind the suit, the Iron Man suit, kind of limits his acting potential. And so you take him out of the suit and you make him flex his brain, make him figure out how to do things on his own. And I think that's the real example that the movie shows, is that like it's not the suit that makes him, it's he makes the suit, right? Other people have worn the suit, like Rhodey has worn the suit. In this movie, Pepper wears the suit, right? She for a brief time, right? And it's kind of like it's not about who is in there. I mean, it's not about how strong the suit is. It's about how strong the man is, how he can overcome his fears, his weaknesses, because this is the movie that deals with the consequences of the Avengers. This one deals with the consequences of everything that is built up to the Avengers. That was a big deal. New York got attacked by aliens. Tony went into space to deliver a nuke to destroy the aliens. He went through a wormhole, right? Like, it's crazy. And then he comes back, and now he's having anxiety attacks. He has PTSD. He's traumatized from being at war, essentially. How does anybody recover from that? And they do a really good job, I think, of focusing on that part of his character, on him building more and more Iron Man suits because he thinks that will protect him, that will keep him safe, that'll keep Pepper safe, that'll make everything A-okay again. But reality is that he needs to focus on what he can control. He can't control aliens from space. He can't control terrorists, right? But he can control what he does, and he chooses to work on the Iron Man suits. He chooses to build and create and to make what works for him, something that protects him. And that's not a bad thing, it's definitely cool having those Iron Man suits, but they shouldn't be the deciding factor, or they shouldn't be the priority. It should be the people that he has in his life. It should be Pepper. It should be Happy. It should be Rhodey. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are people in his life that he cares about, friends that really matter to him. And they should be a part of his life. And they're overlooked because he can't sleep. He can't focus. He can't prioritize the people around him because he's so busy thinking of what else is out there, what else hits his brain, what else hurts, you know? I really like the scene where, well, hold on, let's start from the beginning. I really like that they brought back Yusuf. They brought him back for that opening New Year's Eve party. I thought that was really cool to see him again. And that was such a sad moment that he didn't acknowledge the man that was going to eventually save his life and put forward the journey that he was about to go on, you know? And that's not the only person he's failed, but there's also the Aldrich Killian and then his, like, kind of girlfriend. I forget her name, but the girl he was with that night, you know? It just feels like that's one of the only times where you see somebody, like, get... You can only be, like, a pain or, like, have consequences thrown back at you like that when you're obviously successful and a billionaire and you have, like, other people trying to, like, take from you or make something of their own, right? So it's kind of sucky that he was a different man before he had the arc reactor in his chest, you know? So it's kind of understandable that his past or his actions, his choices come back to haunt him or come back to bite him in the ass when now he's so different than who he used to be. So anyways, with Aldrich Killian, it's like he's this scientist, he's trying to create something, and he wanted Tony Stark, and Tony was like, no, meet me on the roof and we'll talk about it. And he goes up on the roof and he doesn't show up because he's, you know what I mean, being Tony, you know what I mean, putting in that work, giving, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, then we get to, it's Christmas time. This is technically a Christmas movie. Though it's a Christmas movie, but it's not, you know what I mean? It's like, it's during Christmas time. Anyways, my point being is that during the scene, I really like how I enjoyed the creativity that they brought to the Iron Man suit and developing it. You know what I'm saying? It has slowly transformed over the years. You know, the first movie was kind of like figuring out how to put it on and then take it off. And then the second movie is like he's got a suitcase of like an Iron Man suit in there. And then this third one, he can summon the armor onto his body, which is really cool, coated. It's really fun to see. And it also makes for good like choreography and humor. So I definitely like that part of it. Again, I just feel like Robert Downey Jr. does an amazing performance in this movie. He's the most interesting person to see every time he's on screen. And that's what makes the movie so good, is that like, when I talk about watching Thor, I said that like Loki was the most interesting person on the screen. He was the most interesting character that was used the most, when it should have been Thor. And Thor was great. Thor did a great job in that movie. But like, Loki was so much better, in my opinion, right? So in this movie, there wasn't anybody who upstaged Robert Downey Jr., right? Not Rhodey, not the Mandarin, not Aldrich Killian, not nobody. It was just Robert Downey Jr. who stole the show. And like, it felt like I could watch him be Iron Man forever in that movie. You know, it was so fun and smart mouthed and so cool and so powerful. It was like, it was really nice to see that the leading man took control of the whole movie and it never felt boring or stale. It just felt like, what's he going to do next? And that was really cool to me. And then obviously we get the plot of like the Mandarin attacking and blowing up stuff, right? I felt like obviously this villain wasn't, it was a little underwhelming, I guess, mainly because they could have just made it the one guy. They didn't have to bring in the 10 rings into it, because the 10 rings are a villain of Iron Man. But then it just felt a bit like, they were teasing it with us, but it wasn't real. And then it kind of messed me up. I was like, it was a waste. It felt like a bit of a waste when they could have just made it Aldrich Killian. They didn't have to make it like this whole, we're putting on an act and it's a show and it's not real. And you know what I mean? I just felt like that villain was particularly weak because of that. But as for like the genetically modified humans that can like explode and like glow and become super strong and stuff like that, I thought that was cool. They don't really go into explaining it perfectly, I feel, but I could understand the concept. I knew what they were going for. Is like, it's an ability to regrow limbs, and then they gave them extra superhuman abilities. So when Happy gets beaten up, when they explode and they damn near kill him, and then Tony Stark sets into motion like challenging the Mandarin, I thought that was a cool moment. Definitely a badass thing to say to the public and to the media, right? Being able to like talk to a terrorist and give them your home address and be like, I'm not scared of you. I thought that was such a cool scene. And then what follows after. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The first time we see Tony like get that panic attack, that anxiety attack at that restaurant with Rhodey when they're talking about the explosions, they're talking about the Mandarin and stuff. I really liked that scene. Because we finally get to see like the way his mind kind of works. He isn't being told by the kid, how did you get out of the wormhole? Or maybe he did. That's the thing, is that like they leave it ambiguous, right? They don't tell us right off the bat if it like, oh, the kid said it or he didn't say it, right? But he was like, how did you get out of the wormhole? And he gets the anxiety attack, he gets panicked, and he gets into his suit and he's freaking out and he's like, what's going on, Jarvis? What's happening to me? And Jarvis has to tell him like, you're having an anxiety attack, Tony. Like, you need to mellow out, you need to chill. And then he flies away, doesn't even pay the bill. Doesn't even pay for breakfast or lunch or whatever. Rhodey has to do it for him. But I also thought it was funny that he parked the Iron Man suit outside like a car. That was pretty funny. Anyways, the Mandarin blows up. Aldrich Killian blows up another person near Happy Hogan. Happy goes into the hospital, critical, and then Iron Man challenges the Mandarin, and that's a great scene as well, is that like he's directly challenging him. And then he blows up his house. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is crazy. That is wild. But it's particularly idiotic and stupid because Pepper is living there. He's not really thinking. He's just acting off of emotion. And it's like, yeah, that's his friend. Happy got hurt, and he now is trying to attack. He's trying to fight back. It feels like a lot. And because of that, now it's kind of this hunt for the Mandarin. So anyways, he blows up the house, and that was a great sequence, by the way. That whole Tony's house getting blown up, I thought that was really cool. They did that one really well, I think. The slow motion explosion, everybody getting blasted to the other side of the room, the Iron Man suits getting blown up. I thought that was really, really cool. And they did it in such a big budget way. It did feel real. It did look real. It did have like all of the right beats to it. I thought they did a great job with that whole scene. It was really cool to see Tony accidentally give Pepper the suit, or maybe he was trying to like, I thought initially he was trying to give it to himself, but maybe it did make sense that he would give it to her. You could look at it either way, but I really like that scene because, I mean, it's bizarre that he invited the terrorists to his home and then they blow up his house. Like, that is crazy. You know what I mean? But he brings it on himself. And then he's wearing the Mark 42. I think it's Mark 42. It could be Mark 43. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. But he is wearing it, but it's a prototype and not everything is working. And it was cool to see him get creative in the suit. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't typically just like shooting bullets or blasting missiles from his suit, right? It was more so him using a piano to take out a helicopter, you know what I'm saying? Taking out the missile freehand and then throwing it and then repulsor ray blast, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the cool stuff I wanted to see. And then seeing him underwater and then finally get his flight power restored and then flying away. I thought all of that was really, really well done. I think they did a great job of showing, like, obviously, if he wasn't prepared, you know, this is what would happen and how he survives it. You know what I'm saying? But it was also a great example of, like, who the Mandarin is and what he can do. And I guess they just showed up at his house with a bunch of bombs, huh? But anyways, I definitely thought that was such a cool moment and, like, a half victory. Like, he's alive, you know, so he's not dead, so they failed. And he protected Pepper and the other girl. So everything kind of worked out in the end. You know what I'm saying? And then they fly him all the way to Nashville, Tennessee, or to whatever it is, Tennessee, right? Because that's where Jarvis had planned the destination beforehand when they were investigating the Mandarin. And I thought that was a funny little detail of, like, Tony wakes up and he's kind of like, all right, where are we, Jarvis? And he's like, we're outside of Tennessee. We're in Tennessee right now. He's like, what are you talking about? I have to go get Pepper. I have to make sure everything's okay. What are you doing? And then Jarvis shuts down because the battery runs out. And then he goes into the town. He meets that little boy. And I thought the kid did all right. He was pretty annoying, if I'm going to be honest. But there was one good thing to come out of, like, meeting that little kid. And that was the phrase, "Where's my sandwich?" Oh my gosh, I can't. That phrase has stuck with me so much because they used that for, like, a Subway commercial for, like, the longest time. Okay, so if you remember when this movie was coming out in theaters, okay, Subway was promoting the movie, all right? They did, like, a Subway commercial. And in that Subway commercial, they used that phrase, "Where's my sandwich?" And then they used it to promote, like, their $5 footlongs. Like, isn't that nuts? Like, they did that maybe like 10 times a day. Every single commercial, it was like, Iron Man 3 coming to theaters. Where's my sandwich? And you know what I keep thinking? Where's my sandwich? Come eat our new tuna $5 footlong with chips and a drink or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, get a footlong, get a 6-inch. Like, that was so bizarre to me that's what they were doing. They kept doing it over and over and over again. If you remember, you remember. But it was like a Subway promotional thing. It's like, go see Iron Man 3 in theaters and also come to Subway to eat. Like, that was bizarre. That was so funny to me. I still, to this day, every time he brings it up, he goes, "Where's my sandwich?" I think of that commercial. I think of that Subway commercial. So anyways, he learns a little bit more about the Mandarin, I guess, and like who his targets are, their military. He learns about, I don't know if he figures out where he's like staying per se, like in Miami or whatnot in that moment, but I do remember that essentially he has to leave and go to Miami. He has to go to Florida because that's where the Mandarin is supposedly. So anyways, he's having another anxiety attack because he's scared that he's not going to have his Iron Man suit to protect him to fight, to fight the Mandarin. And then the kid's just like, well, you're a mechanic, right? Why don't you just make something? And that was the moment you see him like, I'm in control. I made the suit. I can protect myself. That was the cool moment of like, he feels in control now and he's like, okay, kid. Yeah, I get it. And then we see him build like all of these makeshift battle armor stuff out of like Christmas goods, like bomb ornaments. He has like this electric shock glove. He has like this nail gun that he uses, right? Like basically all this hardware store stuff, like basically like a Home Alone build it yourself kind of a gadget to fight the Mandarin, which is like, would never work because they all have guns, real guns, but he makes it work, you know what I mean? It's kind of fun. Yeah, that whole sequence was also pretty cool. I just like that they used Robert Downey Jr., you know what I mean? Like, I like the way that they didn't make him about the suit, right? Because the first Iron Man is him making it. The second Iron Man is him with his arc reactor, and he makes like a new suit or whatever. This third one is less about the suits, and it's more about him, and the suit happened to have, are just decoration. Cool decoration, very cool and very battle, you know what I mean? It's like, it's very much needed in a part of his character, but it's not everything, So I just like seeing him fight without it. So anyways, we get that whole sequence, and then he finds the Mandarin, only for it to be not the Mandarin. You know what I'm saying? I thought that was really, really funny. I thought that was hilarious. It was funny, but then you're like, oh, so they just wasted that character. At the time, it was like, oh, there is no Mandarin. There is no 10 rings. They just made it up for the movie. Like, it felt like a cheap throwaway. Like, here's a really big villain for Iron Man, and then it turns out it's not him. It's just an actor pretending to be a terrorist. You know what I'm saying? And I forget the actor's name. Oh, my goodness. He's a really good actor. I forget his name. Ben Kingsley, I think? Or Ben Grimsley? I don't remember. Is it Ben Kingsley? Maybe I did get it right. Yes, Ben Kingsley. Fantastic. Yeah. He was in... Okay, cool. Yeah, he was in Iron Man 3. He played Trevor Slattery, I think. Very funny. He does a good job playing like that kind of like a drug addict guy. He does a good job with this character that he plays, but I thought that it was definitely a waste of that villain. And then later on down the line, he comes back with the real villain. Like, they just copied it. So I like that they copied it, but I don't like that they copied it. Does that make sense? Whatever. Anyways, he finds out that he's not the Mandarin. It's an act that Aldrich Killian put on so that way he could still be the bad guy, but nobody knows that he's the bad guy. And we understand that he's now going to make a move to attack the president with Rhodey's Iron Patriot suit, which, all right, like Iron Patriot, I just like War Machine a lot better, but Iron Patriot, I get what they were going for. But anyways, and then we see that he's like he's in cahoots with the vice president to kill the president so that Aldrich Killian can like be in power and be backed up by the president, not the vice president, but the president. So they're going to kill. Okay. Maybe I'm just going all over the place. But essentially, Aldrich played as the Mandarin per se. He hired the actor and made all of these explosions happen. So that way the president would be in like this questionable position. And then he would have Iron Patriot, or like the Iron Patriot suit. And he would kill the president, right? And then the vice president would become the president, and then he would back up Aldrich Killian because the vice president's daughter is missing a leg, and he wants to fund the research so that way she can grow her leg back and be a normal girl again. And funny enough, that's Jenna Ortega, which I was like, why is she in this movie? I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. When I saw her on the screen, I was like, am I out of my mind? Is that who I think it is? And it was her. I was like, wow. I was like, darn, that's why she's never doing no superhero movies. You know what I'm saying? I thought that was so funny. I saw her on the screen. I was like, is that? And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she's the vice president's daughter. They gave her she's missing a leg, you know what I mean? I was like, that is wild. You want to talk about range? You want to talk about acting range? She was missing a limb. She was a little girl missing a limb in a wheelchair. Like, that is range. And did you see her smile? Man, she was just a little girl. I thought that was so funny. So anyways, it's up to Tony and Rhodey to save the president. And so they know he's up in a plane. And Iron Patriot and whoever is up there, everybody gets like falls down to like their out of the plane. And another great moment in this movie. That's what makes this movie so underrated, is that it has so many great moments. Like this airplane sequence where everybody's falling out of the sky and Tony has to save all of them, and they grab hands, and then like he saves them just at the last second, and then they all swim in the water. You know, I thought that was a great moment. I skipped over the part where he escapes from I think it was the Miami compound, or like wherever they had the Mandarin. Like, he found out that the Mandarin wasn't the Mandarin, and then he got like tied up to a bed, and then he was waiting for his Iron Man suit to like show up. The only problem with that whole scene that I didn't like was that it made it all feel like it all happened like in real time, because he gets like one piece of the Iron Man suit, like the hand, and then he's like, where's the rest of the Iron Man suit? And then the little kid like has to open the garage, and then all of the Iron Man suit parts like fly. But he's in Tennessee, and Florida is like hours away, so it's like, how quickly did everything fly over there, you know? So I don't know. Anyways, moving past that, now they have to go find the president, because they saved the civilians, the airplane crew, right? The stewardesses and whatnot, and whoever else was on that plane, but they didn't get the president. So now they're gonna string up the president and the Iron Patriot suit, and then they're gonna blow him up with oil and make it seem like it was a terrorist attack on oil and not the Mandarin trying to get his research funded type of a thing. And then again, this final fight, the action in this movie is really, really good. Tony and James Rhodes finally make it there to save the president. And then Tony summons all of his Iron Man suits that he had like stored away that didn't get destroyed. And then they come through, and he like changes into multiple different Iron Man suits. I thought that was really cool when he jumps in the air, and then he like jumps into a suit, and then boom, he has to like fly. I thought that it was going to be a really unique choice to kill Pepper, because there's a moment where he finds her and he's like, "You gotta let go. You can't stay up there. Just jump and I'll catch you. I promise." And then she falls to her death, and we're like, "Oh snap!" Like that's one of those moments where it's like, "Take my hand. I'll catch you," and then you don't catch them, and I was just like, "Dang, dude, Butterfingers." But anyways, I thought that would have been really interesting for them to kind of kill Pepper. But I'm glad that they didn't, because I kind of like that long-lasting relationship in his life. So anyways, he sees Pepper die. Essentially, he thinks that she's dead. But then he finally faces Aldrich afterwards, and now it's like Iron Man suit after Iron Man suit fight, punch, kick, blast, like the whole thing. It's so cool. They do such a great job with it. And then, Pepper has like the new powers of like Aldrich Killian and whatnot. Oh, and there's that scene where the Mark 42 is coming in and Tony's like, "The prodigal son returns." And then it's flying, and then it breaks down before it can like suit him up. And then in a really cool move, he puts the Mark 42 on Aldrich Killian, and then he's like, "Yo, Jarvis, do me a favor. Blow Mark 42 for me, will you?" And then he goes, "No!" And then they close I thought that was just a cool moment. I thought that was really cool. Again, this movie is pretty underrated as a Marvel movie because it's not like a huge global threat, I guess, like some of the other ones. But I think this movie did a pretty good job. But anyways, Pepper has powers. She kills Aldrich Killian, and then she's kind of like freed from her disease or whatever they did to her, experiment on her. And then Tony takes out the shrapnel from his chest, so he no longer has to survive with the arc reactor. And that's supposed to be an example of like, he doesn't need that to save him anymore. He can save himself now. It doesn't need the arc reactor to be his lifeline. He can now, it's a part of him, but he doesn't need that to save him anymore. So he's Iron Man. And I thought that was cool. I like the way that this movie all tied up. And then the end credits scene with Mark Ruffalo, I thought that was really funny. Stan Lee cameo was, I think, he's like on TV for like bingo or like some sort of pageant, and he's holding a 10, like a 10 out of 10 sign. I thought that was really funny. Shout out Stan Lee. And then let's see, what else in this movie did I like? I mean, obviously too much to go over now, but I just feel like Robert Downey Jr. was like perfect casting for Iron Man. And I think that the Marvel was really smart in asking Robert Downey Jr. to stay and continue to play Iron Man, even though his contract had kind of finished. I don't know if it was Iron Man 3 that his contract was over with. It could have been Age of Ultron. It could have been that the second Avengers movie. I don't know for certain, but let's just say Iron Man 3 was the end of the road. And then they had to figure out like, okay, the next movie, and then Captain America, and then Spider-Man, and then so on and so forth. So it's like, how does that all work? But anyways, Iron Man 3, when you're watching Iron Man 3, just be ready for some good action scenes. Be ready for some nice storytelling, because this is like the first time we see the consequences of like this long-term storytelling, right? Like if you look at Iron Man, Iron Man 2, and Iron Man 3 as a trilogy, it's like, yeah, you can kind of follow it. But with Iron Man 3, you also need the context of the Avengers. So it kind of feels like there's another movie in between that you need to see to get caught up. Even though they catch you up in the movie, it's like, oh, I need to go back and watch the Avengers to understand that, like, he fought an alien army, and then that whole thing. And then once you watch the Avengers, you're like, let me watch Captain America and Thor and the Incredible Hulk. And you know what I mean? So it just kind of, it feels like it gives you more and more to work with. But when you're watching Iron Man 3 in particularly, just be ready for some greatness from Robert Downey Jr. I think he does an amazing job in this movie. It's the last time he like solos a movie. You know, he's the main character. I mean, obviously he's a big cast member throughout the rest of the franchise, but he's not the only main character. Does that make sense? So it's an ensemble cast from here on out. And he plays a supporting character very well in other stories. So I just think that they do such an amazing job with his character here. And it's just another example of like, not only his Iron Man suit progression, but Tony Stark the man's progression as like a character. They always do something interesting with him. And this Iron Man 3 is going to definitely set up what happens in Avengers Age of Ultron. So I'm excited. I'm really excited about how this movie connects to makes everything else down the line make sense. So yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.